It's our first Tacky Talk of September 2023 with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy. Hey, Tacky, welcome to
Hey,
September.
hey, Joe. Good to see you in the month of September. It's September 6th, I think. So I hope so. That's what it says in the bottom right hand of my computer here. And I hope you had a fun and pleasant Labor Day. We actually got some decent weather going to Labor Day, not too hot on Friday and Saturday, a little bit more humid on Sunday, and a bit humid yesterday. But overall, we finally got blessed by a decent weekend.
I know we kind of bookended the summertime. Memorial Day weekend was nice. Labor Day was nice. It's just the in-between part that was crummy.
Agreed. It's a lot of discontent from people who had booked trips to the Cape and whatnot, and I had friends on the Cape too, and I think you went a couple of times, and it was kind of hit or miss on the days.
Pretty much didn't get a lot of beach time in, but it was time off, so there you go.
Well, I had my first real, I wouldn't call it quite sunburn, but I mean, after yard work, I had a bit of skin exfoliation, let's call it that way. Uh, Normally exfoliate after July 4th when I'm getting way too much sun.
Yeah, exactly.
Out in the parades, as you know. But yeah, this is a late exfoliation, people.
Any Labor Day specific events that you attended?
No, I had a fairly quiet Labor Day, guys. I didn't do going to Boston. I spent Labor Day caulking a bathtub, as well as changing the water filter in my house. I have a water filter in the basement for the whole system. Turned out to be a little bit more work than expected. And those who've caulked tubs know you just don't caulk it once. You got to go in there a few different times to clean out the grout and go through all that. And I actually have a kitchen sink that's up next to do. So, like all of you, I mean, I have all this little housework you need to get done. I mean, the lawn finally got mowed, for example, this weekend, and a lot of branches were cleared out. And because of all these storms we've had, I had a lot of tree branches, some pretty big ones, actually, not just little bits of tree branches, just like good 4-inch size branches came down, and had to borrow a chainsaw. I know every time I mention that, people get afraid. Me with heavy, sharp equipment. I don't know why. I'm accident prone, but still have all my limbs. And I had to grind them down, and I did not get to use the fire pit once this year yet. Just terrible weekends.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You needed, I mean, some weekends you needed to put a sweater on for crying out loud.
Yeah, very confusing, right? So I like the fire pit. It's therapeutic, and it's a good way of dealing with some yard waste while enjoying a little fire pit. I mean, I just don't know how to.
Maybe a marshmallow or two in the process.
I don't do it every day or every weekend, but you figure you can use it, maybe twice or 3 times a year, invite some friends over, chit chat next to a fire kind of thing. And right, marshmallows, or I have one that you can put a grill over, so you can do some light barbecuing.
Well, here we are. It's back to school. Actually, first day in Quincy is today, and then all the fall events that are going to come up soon.
Well, as a childless individual who's still single, I am not nearly the same euphoria as all my friends who have children.
Yes, it's the most wonderful time of the year for them, and the worst time for the kids.
Every time this year, all my friends with children are like, it's school day. They get excited more than the children. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know what that's like. And I do live vicariously to my friends regarding family matters.
Not a bad thing at all, certainly. But you'll have some events to attend, right? In the district in the fall for sure.
Yeah, Chowderfest is coming up on the 9th of September, 2 to 6 or so out in the neck at the end of C Street in the old Harvey boat rental site. I actually have a memorial service. I got to head to Worcester the morning of, so I'm not going to get the Chowderfest to much later, and probably have to just do the fast walk through at that point. But you should hopefully see my sign up. Me and many other folks that are sponsoring the event. We talked about this before we started the show, regarding the Eastern Azarian College migrant situation. The mayor has set a meeting on the 12th at Central Middle School at 6:30 start to have the state come down to talk about the migrant issue a bit, and is there a plan? What is the plan? What is going forward? That's going to be coming up, and we got invitations for things like Dove's Harvesting Hope in October, which is their annual fundraiser. Which is those who don't know, that's our local domestic violence shelter and advocacy agency. And I think that Interfaith Social Services will be sending invites soon for another winter event, but I don't expect a large number of late November into January events this year. COVID numbers are spiking again. I won't say it's a huge spike, but it is spiking. If you look at the pattern from the last two cycles now, COVID, August seems to be when it starts to pick up on its way to a rise into the winter.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be some new vaccines coming out soon for the new variants, so folks should look for that along with their flu shots, of course.
Yeah, hopefully the new vaccine shots for the BXX will be coming out in mid to late September. Flu shots are available. You can get it now. We're actually right around the right time of year they should be getting a flu shot. Early mid September should give you enough coverage through the winter time. RSP, what I keep pronouncing it wrong, but
yeah, V is in Victor. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're older, definitely get that. It's actually not uncommon for young children to give that to their grandparents. It can cause respiratory issues as a relatively new vaccine. Shingles vaccine, if you're 15 above, definitely, schedule in shingles vaccine. If people who've had shingles will tell you it's a very miserable experience. I've known people who've had it. You're better off vaccinated and have to deal with that. And so there's plenty of vaccines you could schedule. Not for all in one day, but you can kind of space them out. Well, obviously, flu is the one's going right now. Everyone's pushing because it gives the maximum coverage. Maybe you should get COVID close to the end of September. It takes 2 weeks to activate, and then you at least get your coverage probably right into January, February, and shingles and other things. So you probably should get your leisure. Shingles vaccine is kind of shingles is kind of funky because it's like an existing virus already in your system from chickenpox.
That's right. Yeah, and it's a 2-shot vaccination also, so you need to space it out for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, 50 and above. Highly recommended by the CDC for shingle shots. So I say it's an odd one because shingles is a variation of the chickenpox. If you had chickenpox, that virus is still in you. That's kind of how you created your own immunity against future chickenpox. But shingles is a variation actually caused by a mutation that can be given to you by a kid, or it's in your body and decided to change what it is.
Yeah. With regards to the Welcome Center at DNC, Techie, the meeting coming up next week, obviously, the governor declared state of emergency. I know the National Guard's been sent to some of the hotels, not in Quincy, I don't believe, but in other areas that are having trouble. Do you think the state's doing all it can?
Well, the problem is we don't know what we're trying to get to, right? I had talked with the Secretary of Housing office last week, and the question was very simple in the end. Where are they coming from? And a lot of us initial thoughts was this was a federal program, but those are generally coordinated through local refugee organizations. The feds have designated certain organizations for refugee placement. Ukrainians and Afghans and Haitians have utilized the local organizations. This is different. Because we don't know when they're arriving, how they're arriving, and where they're arriving. So it's not really coordinated in the sense that, the feds have decided to start shuffling people around, for a lack of a better term, and proceed to, contact various states and their own refugee assistance networks to let people know they're coming, and then the federal funding will follow. This is not that circumstance, is what I'm getting the impression from the Secretary of Housing's office. This is they just show up somehow situation, and we don't know when, where, and how. And this is the frustrating part of the whole thing. It's from my standpoint, I'm not averse in helping folks. The problem is that I just do not know what resources we need because every person's different. We don't have a coordinated effort. And thankfully, we live in a city as a high service city, right? We have QCAP, basic community services. We have Manny Community Health Center. We can go on and on and on. And as we've proven during COVID, we've learned how to ramp up big time when we need to ramp up. But we actually knew what we're trying to ramp up to. That's not the case here. It's the lack of predictability of it all. is the troubling part. In certain communities, in wealthy areas like Acton's the one that comes to mind, are accepting a small number of refugees. We're not talking like hundreds, we're talking dozens. And they don't have a human service network. If you're in a high wealth area, you don't need a QCAP. You don't need Manatee Community Health Center. You're pretty much okay. So the National Guard is being sent out there largely to help coordinate human service efforts of existing agencies trying to get to places that they don't normally serve. There's no reason to need a community health center in Lexington. So that's kind of what's going on here. It's why we have the National Guard out. I don't expect to see any National Guard in Quincy, maybe a couple, but very unlikely. Also, we have a little concern talking to folks locally that we don't want to also give the impression that this is kind of an imprisonment situation, right? People in uniform, trying to contain people in kind of that appearance of, right? An appearance of some kind of like military action. This is the National Guard. It is not the U.S. Army. The federal government is prohibited from using U.S. military personnel on American soil. This is a acted by the governor. It's not a security issue. This is a humanitarian assistance issue. And we know the National Guard are not human service workers. So, they're really there to provide support for existing agencies. Still, they need money from the feds. I suspect that, we're already put money in from the states. I suspect maybe down the road we have to kick in a few more dollars, but we've already, allocated resources for Haitians, Afghans, and Ukrainians before this situation. And we'll see where we go from there. But, I'm troubled more by the inability of us to have some level of predictability so we can address the human service needs.
Yeah, that's a good point about the National Guard. They are logistical experts, so they know how to, transport and relocate large numbers of people in a very efficient way.
Yes, you're correct. I mean, you can get stuff boxed up. You can get people moved around. Get the trucks. Help identify locations and logistics for community health centers to get out to places they normally go to. And I've heard stories of places where these folks have been put in hotels, but you can't walk to a grocery store. It's like 10 miles on a highway. So if you're on parts of like Route 9, for example, we're in the middle of nowhere between the hotel and anywhere else. You're kind of trapped. And now actually I know it's true. There's been situations where folks were literally starving. They did not think about how to get them food with hotels that have no restaurant components. So, I mean, there's a humanity to this stuff, folks. I mean, you start.
Yeah, they can't just jump in a car and go down to the store. They they barely have the clothes on their back.
Yeah, it's difficult enough to think that, we're in a country we let people go hungry, particularly those that the government has placed. But the idea of having children also go hungry and pregnant women getting hungry because they've been placed by the government in a location and they really don't know what to do next because they don't know where they are. They don't understand what's happening and the government's placed you here. I would prefer we could try to avoid that happening.
Yeah. Can the state delegation reach out to the Congress, our congressional delegation for assistance?
Well, when Liz Warren was here visiting file the bills, we made a quick mention to her that we got a problem. She's aware of it. The federal delegation is aware of what's going on. And, that's the best we can do is bring it to their attention and, to bring attention to the Biden administration about what they're going to do next. But I mean, these are families here. They have kids, and they would the parents would do anything to save their children. You don't trek, thousands of miles if you didn't have a purpose. And the people in Quincy are families, pregnant women, people with young children, coming from a very bad situation. They're running from something. Most of us don't know what the experience like is to run from something that's dangerous and potentially, not just kill you, but also your young children. So, I get it. Hopefully other people understand that too. I live in Wallaston. Those who may not be aware, I'm about 10 minutes from ENC. Wallaston Center is 5 minutes on foot from my house. It's my neighborhood too, folks. I live here, and I've seen folks around, and they just there. I mean, it's not like there's any problems. I've not heard of one incident of any issues, and I see people enjoy the night walking their children. Probably one of the most peaceful places in the world is Wallaston Center.
Yeah, certainly quieter than it was years past. That's for sure.
Well, I grew up here, so I mean, been in the same house since 1977. So
Now you're just a newcomer.
well, I found out that I am not the oldest resident in my neighborhood more than once.
No, I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
Some folks have been here since the 50s when this was still farmland.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Anything going on at the State House right now?
Nothing. It's quiet. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just skip to the chase here. I mean, I had my staff meetings this morning. We're preparing our fall workload. We just set up a schedule today. Obviously constituent services continue. Phone calls to the office. We reviewed who called in and reviewing emails this morning. Set a plan of who's talking to whom, so to speak, in communication in the office, and what do I need to do as part of the team, so to speak, to get the work done. We're waiting for a schedule regarding RETA overrides. That's up next, and as we talked about before the summer break, not summer, August break. We only get really August off. We don't really get a summer. Hoping that House and Senate leadership will break through whatever's going on in their conversations that has now trickled down to Senate chairs in particular regarding not moving bills out of committees. So, hoping that maybe everybody got a restful summer, and when the conversations come up again, that everyone be like, let's got to move forward here. But I mean,
the tax cut package is the one I think of.
Well, I'm more concerned about the committee level stuff, to be honest, folks. I mean, I'm the chair of committee, and my senators got instructions from the Senate president to not do anything. That's untenable from my standpoint. I mean, I need to move bills or, move to more work on bills, and I need a co-chair that is able to do it. And the president's office is instructed, don't do anything. And
really,
yeah, it's been very troubling. We touched on this briefly back in July, but I need, my needs aren't that important to the Senate president. But I mean, it'd be nice if you just let the committees do their jobs.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it was that direct a statement. I just thought it was just a bog down in discussions. I didn't realize it was purposeful.
Well, it's trickled down to our level.
Yeah.
That's what troubles me, and the Senate president's orders, was an indication it's trickled down to our level. And it really inhibits co-chairs from doing this. And frankly, all of us will learn to get along. It is not in our best interest to fight each other as we're trying to learn about each other and develop a working relationship. And this takes time. So you can't just, walk into a room and suddenly, you're instant buddies, right? You got to work on these relationships to get a working relationship going.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is talking about this when Maura Healey first got elected. You said it's not a guarantee just because there's a democratically controlled executive branch that there's going to be all peaches and marshmallows.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this is still a business with people, and not all people get along. But it's imperative for all of us to learn how to work together. And sometimes, life friends come out of it. And sometimes, it's kind of like you got to just kind of work through whatever the deal is with the other person. It's no two people are the same. And same thing working with my own committee members. I got new committee members for the first time. I got new people who were elected on my committee for the first time too. And try to help them out. For example, we did, I think I mentioned this already, but we did like an office hour type thing in August just for my members to go through the various bills and public hearings we've had. It gets overwhelming. Sometimes people didn't think of an issue, back in June. They gave it some thought. They want to talk to the chair about it in August and try to understand what the dynamics are. So, it's the misconception is always like, well, you just do what the speaker says. Well, kinda, yeah, kinda no. It's
right, because you're answerable to your constituency.
That's correct. And I have to answer my membership because my membership has to vote on my bills. So I need a bill. I need to convince my members to go with me on these bills. Right. Same thing with my co-chair. I need my co-chair to help agree on the bill too, so we can agree on the same page. We want to be on the same page when we present it to the membership. And then when we present it to leadership, we want to be on the same page of the conversation. If we're not in agreement, that's fine too. But we like to inform the members and leadership that we're not in agreement.
Right. At least continue talking, right?
Agreed, and try to figure out, where we need to be on certain things together. And
Yeah. It's the federal government that's in danger of shutting down, not the state government.
well, the doom and gloom funding deadline. As much as we get criticism for our late budget, and we talked about this before about the fact they don't worry about it because I understand how the budget works. I mean, the federal government has legit shutdown problems. And I don't hear the level of criticism in the local papers that they place on us when you have the biggest economy in the world that literally does not have an annual budget. Like literally, that's why you have these continuing appropriations. The legislature, the Congress, has not approved a budget, I think, since the George W. Bush. And I think that was like early in the W. Bush administration. I mean, they refused to approve one during the Obama administration, refused to do one on the Trump administration, and continue not to approve one the Biden administration. And you want my speculation, folks? This is my speculation: is that the party in power, it doesn't matter which party, as soon as they establish their own budget, one, they have to balance it, which they don't have to do in continuing appropriations, and two, they don't want to upset anybody. As I've learned over decades of doing this now, once you establish a budget out there, doesn't matter how much money you've got, somebody's going to get mad because once you actually see the proposal, it activates the activists at all levels, whether it be business or not-for-profits or citizens or whatever, right? And, they start advocating and they're angry at the legislatures because they weren't funded or funding level they want, or have outside section language policy issues they want.
Yeah, that's basically they take the easy way out, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of view. As I sometimes remind the federal delegation folks, I mean, I do kind of see things a little different because of the nature of my job, and I can't hide from the constituency. Trust me, they kick my head in on many things. They're unhappy about not getting enough funding for it. But at the federal level, as soon as either political party, it doesn't matter one is in power, they put a budget proposal out there, it's up for public scrutiny. And let the games begin, so to speak, on the advocates. No matter what doesn't. I don't care. Any special interest group, any advocacy group goes in and starts arguing about it, and it puts the congressional folks in a bad position where they now have local advocates in their own constituencies now fighting for things, and they're going to get in this little conflict between their base of voters that they think is their base, and then you got the advocates on the other side. That creates a different type of friction that I deal with, quite frankly, on a regular basis. So, not having a budget doesn't expose you to policy positions regarding government spending.
Right, it's the easy way out, like I said. Yeah, exactly. Just keep kicking it down the road.
Yep, and as you can tell, I'm not partisan on that matter. It's a game played by both sides.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What is going to be happening with ballot questions in the 2024 election cycle?
Well, depending if the Attorney General certifies the ballot question, you have to get a next set of signatures coming up, I think, in October. It's not that many, relatively speaking. And then, the bills, they become bills filed with the legislature at the beginning of the year. The committees have to at least give one public hearing. They're not subject to the House rules because they're ballot questions, the statutory issues. And I believe the first week in May, because the date changes around because the number of days of filing, not necessarily the exact day of a month. I believe the legislature has to make a decision, actually has to approve it and send it to the governor's desk before then. If not, the advocates get more signatures and proceed to take us on, or take you on, because it's not me anymore. Take me on in the sense that I'm a voter, just like you, right, in November to try to get it approved. But it's still a journey because the Constitution has very strict provisions regarding ballot questions, particularly the issue of how many questions you can ask. You only ask one question. You can't ask multi-layer questions.
Right. I remember a couple got disqualified because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got to be tightened in a way where the ballot question answers that one question on policy piece. So if you don't get approved by the AG, or maybe you have been approved by the AG, you still have a chance to appeal the AG's decision at the Supreme Judicial Court. So, sometime probably October-ish, lawsuits are going to start.
Yeah. 2 have already been approved. The question of should the MCAS be a graduation requirement, and should rent control be eliminated? Doesn't mean they're going to appear on the ballot. It just means that they pass constitutional muster.
Well, or the AG's interpretation of the Constitution muster.
Right.
Well, in mass, the MCAS issue is not new. MCAS has been around for many years. I think there are no kids left. They do not remember what MCAS is. It's a prerequisite for graduation. It does have some drawbacks to MCAS. The people teaching to the test, the school system is limited on how much it can be creative. MCAS are used as a gauge of a school system as opposed to actually looking to the totality of it. As people look at one number as opposed to looking at the totality of the system. But MCAS also is trying to establish minimum educational standards at a statewide level that ensure that all schools at least teaching minimum level adequacy. I personally think you need to do reading and math. Everything else should really be just basic knowledge, and school systems should have a lot of flexibility on the remainder. But as I joke, this from the movie Incredibles too, this isn't, what is this? This isn't math, right? You have to go through a long steps of I don't know why, because no one needs to know how to get 1 + 1. I don't need to write you a mathematical theorem to explain why I got 1 to 1 to equal 2. It doesn't help your cognitive learning. I don't believe that at all. But that's just me.
I don't know. I mean, math today is taught very differently than when you and I were in school.
Well, I think it was more expeditious when we were kids learning math, because it got to the point and you knew the basics. You can get to any point. Same thing with reading. As long as you understand, the basics of how it works, it's a foundation of your future education to learn things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. It teaches you how to learn, because you're never going to learn everything, but if you know how to learn, then you're in good shape.
Standardized testing does not require cognitive thinking, because the majority of standard testing is multiple choice.
It's all rote. Right. Exactly. Yep.
So either doing things by commit memory, or you're doing a problem solving using a multiple choice system as opposed to writing an essay or answering a question or things like that. And listen, I have some things you can hear that I like about MCAS. As you also can hear from the same conversation, I have a lot of things I don't like about it. And
that's the biggest question is, should it be a requirement for graduation? I don't think teachers argue that it's a good way to assess a student's skills, but should they be required to pass it in order to graduate?
Yeah, you can talk to Frank Santoro more about it. I talked to Frank as principal of Quincy High School. One of the challenges in this city is people as English language learners.
Yeah.
Going to get here at like age 14 trying to learn English, puts them at a disadvantage regarding MCAS. So they may be, quite well educated in terms of the sense that they can be educated, in the sense that they're not, they can do it. It's just they're behind on language skills. When I was at St. Anne's School many moons ago, we were required to take aptitude tests by the state every so often to see if the school was meeting the state minimum standard on education. I remember doing those standardized tests.
Oh yeah, there's pop quiz. That was the term, and because you didn't know it was coming.
Yeah, but we never taught towards the test.
Right.
I remember well because I was good at fractions for some reason.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Can't explain
that. Percentages was a big help for me. Once I mastered that, that was a help.
Agreed. So I also learned how to do context clues, right? I mean, people who know me know I have a lot of trouble spelling. Grammar is always a bit of a challenge for me. But context clues is how I get by reading. And I still practice that today. I mean, I read a lot of stuff, as you know, regarding reports and a lot of bills and bill drafts. And, you hit a point where like the sentence is a little bit of nonsense. So I'm forced to try to figure out what they're trying to get to on context clues based on the totality of the document. Again, you don't focus in on one little thing. You got to see the whole picture. And from there, kind of fill in the blank of where a legislator was trying to go writing a bill.
Yeah, that's a skill that I was taught in news writing, because you really have to paraphrase a news story to make it comprehensible to your audience.
Yeah. And listen, I don't know what's in today's education. I have no kids, so I can't speak from personal knowledge. We're just talking, you and I talking about things that helped us out when we were young.
Right.
We were both young at one time. That skills we carry on today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. How about rent control?
Well, this is round two for rent control. The fact is, this was voted on back in 1994, I think, that the voters decided to not have rent control, and as a result, that's where we are today. And back then, I believe it was only a small number of communities. I think it was like Cambridge, Boston, and maybe a handful of others had rent control.
I know Cambridge for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, most of them got rid of rent control, and people old enough remember that there was a quote unquote housing / rent control board
Mhm.
at all community levels that would you could appeal or dispute rent issues regarding your landlord, and those boards and commissions don't exist anymore, as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they do.
Yeah, this was a thing at one time.
Oh yeah.
Before I got to government in '94, I was still in college, but I believe it was '94. So this is kind of repeat question, I suppose. 30 is it 30 years later?
Years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, how the campaign works out. It was soundly repealed rent control in '94, like really soundly repealed by the voters.
Yeah. First rent was not like it is today then, that's for sure.
Yeah, and slumlords. People forget what slumlords are. Rent control created a situation where, since they couldn't get more money, they had no incentive to do capital improvements.
That's right. People living in squalor. Yeah.
And then you also have a situation where people were in immense wealth wouldn't give up their apartments because they had rent control. So it just added to their wealth as opposed to moving someplace that could be reflective of their income. Not like you couldn't live meager lifestyles. I mean, I don't discourage that, but it doesn't help folks that really need help, regarding affordable rent when someone who's making, millions of dollars is perfectly justified to stay in a rent control housing unit.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and there also is the argument that it would prohibit developers from building new housing.
well, it's a financing issue, right? The rent agreements actually are tied to financing, and depending on how much your construction project costs, you do have to make a return on profit. Plus, you got to pay the loans off plus interest. And if you can't do that, that's a problem. So, for example, commercial real estate in Boston is having some issues because a lot of those new construction were financed on a plan of how much the rents would be. If they go below a certain rent level, it's almost not worth having a tenant because you're better off trying to argue you can't make the mortgage payments rather than get a meager sum compared to the size of your mortgage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a money losing perspective right from the start.
Yeah, you're better off trying to get off the write-off, perhaps, and if it's bad enough, you have a justification of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want that in Boston because it just destroyed the commercial real estate market.
Right.
Completely destroy it. So yeah, I mean, I get it. We've been here before. I'm old enough to remember that we've been here before. We'll see how the campaign works out and how much money is put in by interest groups on both sides to make this argument. Also, remember, this is going to have to try. Homeowners are a very high voting base in the state. I think people forget that too. People own homes, or as a guy who likes to keep an eye on election numbers, homeowners have a higher voting rate than non-homeowners, particularly on non-presidential years. I'm sure. So I mean, like municipal elections and my elections when there's no president on the ballot,
Right.
homeowners have a higher percentage of voting. Doing it in 2024, the advocates are hoping the renters will come out in droves as part of a presidential year and vote in favor of rent control. But there's a lot of homeowners.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's not guaranteed. They still have to get a certain amount of signatures and defend any challenges that might be brought up against it. But it's initially got approval from the AG's office.
Yeah, I'll be hard pressed not to believe that the development community and landlord associations won't fight this in court. I suspect they will. But in terms of gathering signatures, I mean, it's a low barrier compared to other states. And let's be honest about this too. I mean, professional ballot question gathering is now a profession, not a volunteer system.
It's true. Yeah. Although you'll still see them outside the supermarkets.
Yeah, the deal is they pay per signature. It's not necessarily illegal. I think if we try to ban that practice, it's cause a First Amendment problem.
I see. Okay.
So not like all the advocates do it. I think the guys who did ranked choice voting, I think they did it themselves. I don't think they used a company to get the signatures. But we'll see. I mean, they don't. We'll see what happens because if they form a ballot question pack, we'll get the reports on who they pay as part of the disclosures on the pack, and then it won't be hard for media folks to try to figure out if they got signatures paid by paid people or they did it themselves.
Right. Yeah, it's public information at that point. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was thinking of you this morning, Tack. I was reading a story about how car manufacturers have been given a F grade for protecting privacy of consumers when it comes to the telematics of their vehicles.
Well, I mean, what metric they using regarding the privacy issue, right? I mean, if the car manufacturer is collecting all your data, of course it's going to be an F. I mean,
Yeah.
If the car manufacturer is collecting your data and has it properly encrypted, it's secured, and not able to be accessed from an outside source, then they get an A for data protection, right?
And that was the argument, that it was not encrypted. It was just wide open.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You do need
And
to,
that they're selling it as well.
well, that's a larger question we're trying to work through in my committee regarding data sales and how it works. The concern is that you do data sales at a individual level, I mean, they know exactly who I am versus an aggregate level.
Yeah.
So, believe it or not, you all can go down to City Hall and pay for a CD to get the city residency list. Now
Mhm.
that's individual data. Certain folks aren't on it. For example, police aren't on it. So you can do it now through get a Excel file, and you can sort it out yourself on individual data. Obviously, as an elected, we need voter data. Otherwise, I don't know who I'm mailing stuff to, right?
Right.
On the flip side, you have massive amounts of electronic data. Do you really need to know who Tacky Chan is from Ford, or in my case, a Volkswagen? The answer is probably no. But do they want to know, generally speaking, how many about Volkswagens in Quincy? Maybe.
Right.
Data is a little bit tricky because what you need to find and what you're looking for and who actually cares about what you're selling for data is not as apparent as people will give it credit for. Like, you need to know how many Volkswagen owners are in the zip code. What that means the individual? Not a whole lot of anything.
Yeah.
Does it matter more if they have, your individual address? Well, absolutely. Do they want to know what the fuel efficiency of people driving in Quincy is? Do you really care? Probably not. How many
Not
people?
marketable.
It's not
Can't sell it.
marketable.
Yeah.
Right? But you may need it for research data,
True.
right? How do you think we know what the fuel efficiency of drivers in a specific region are? Is it telemetric data?
Yeah.
Right? And that data can be used largely for more efficient vehicle construction down the road. Now, can you sell that data? Sure. I mean, it's like you could probably sell it to most likely insurance companies.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good point. Sure.
Yeah, because somebody may remember, but insurance companies used to survey you on how many miles you drive, how many days a week you drive to work. Why? Because the insurance company wants to have an idea of your car usage as part of their calculation regarding coverage in certain geographic areas.
Yeah, they're trying to assign risk. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if your car is in your driveway 3 out of 7 days a week, this risk assessment of being injured in your car is very different from being at 7 days a week.
Right. Yep.
So with telemetric data, well, insurance companies will have a better idea of people's driving patterns in aggregate and do a reassessment of risk.
Yep, it's an open book, and I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize how much of their daily lives are calculated and distributed.
Yeah, it's just different how we do it. Instead of sending you a survey, now the collection's directly in your car. We talked about this regarding right to repair. Telemetric data will be given to your car repair person. They can strip everything out of it, including your contact list. They can get to it somehow, and then play with the software. So again, data protection, as you can hear, I do a lot of this stuff. It's a contextual issue, right? Everybody has an F, depending on how you define what you're looking for in terms of data protection.
Right. Yep. I know something else you're familiar with is the energy industry, and I see that one of the wind farm projects, I think it was Coast Wind off the Vineyard, withdrew their project because of the financial viability of it.
No, agreed. This is one of the things I think people forget about energy in general. Energy is not a low risk investment. It actually is a high risk investment. It's because of the construction and the government regulation on it and the unpredictability of usage. So it's kind of funny because we all need electricity. I mean, I dare anybody to tell me they don't use electricity, right? If you don't have electricity, you're not listening to me and you right now on whatever device you're using. And you figure, it's a guaranteed revenue source because you're going to have guaranteed customers. But we're in a competitive energy generation state. And even though we mandate certain requirements for renewable power, the government oversight regarding load usage is very complex. So, example, we're a very high energy efficiency state, light bulbs, heating sealants, changing your fuel sources for your heating systems, new appliances changes energy load, meaning how much you consume. Big industrial customers, whether it be a giant factory or it could be you at your home, can reduce your usage. As I've talked over, we very much encourage people to manage their power at home to reduce the cost of your bill. But that hurts the generators because the generators need guaranteed customer usage to make their profits, which then pays their mortgage, which then pays their shareholders, which pays also the interest on other stuff, plus the general cost of maintenance and the price of the construction itself. And if you can't make those numbers, the project will fail.
Right.
And hyperinflation the last several years is very problematic because, you need to get steel. Steel's not cheap, right? You need fossil fuels. Believe it or not, you need grease. It is a windmill, right? And as I like to say, it's acceptable fossil fuel. I mean, you're not using it to burn. And you also got a safety factor, right? If, a windmill goes down, a lot of grease and toxic materials come out inside of it. Okay, not good. 50 of them go down. Okay, now we got a spill, right? Depending on the circumstances. So, I mean, these things have to, sit in an ocean with potential Category 2 hurricane coming up the coastline to keep them from being destroyed. Yeah. So this is a very costly endeavor. And investors will want a high rate of return for high risk. And government intervention in your project is considered high risk.
Okay.
So if the government decides that, we're not going to change, we're going to change our policy regarding the types of renewable power, let's say we decide to use solar as opposed to wind and change the portfolio, well, that puts investor money at risk. They going to want a high return because government's unpredictable, right? If there's a demand load reduction, massive demand load reduction, because the government's pushing demand load reduction, use less electricity. Well, that means you're selling less electricity.
Yeah. It's a catch-22.
Exactly. In the windmill industry, the government wants a fixed price with a cost adjustment, CPI type of adjustment, on the energy they sell to customers. And, you're working on a fixed cost. And we just discovered, 9% inflation on our fixed costs lifestyles because, raises weren't happening just yet. And even then, raises weren't keeping up with inflation. And, if you're retired, living on a fixed income, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. When a developer would get sell fixed cost plus some adjustment for CPI or whatever, but that's always going to be a lagging indicator because you know what it is till it actually happens. And it won't be adjusted. It'll be adjusted on a yearly rate subject to regulation, meaning the DPU actually has to approve that adjustment. And there's no guarantee that's going to happen. Investors get scared and they're going to pull out. And
so it's going to slow everything down.
Yeah, this isn't like some 1 acre solar farm. We're talking about hundreds of ginormous 300-foot plus windmills that are going to be heavily on foundation into bedrock. That is basically major storm resistant. Plus, you got to lay the cable down. In a grid format with every windmill underwater, which has environmental disruption. So you got to deal with all that stuff. because people forget it's not just about birds flying by a windmill, but you got, an impact of sea life moving around it, but you got to lay down some cables. This isn't like just one giant telephone cable across the ocean. This is a lot of cabling. And then you got to get that cabling on shore and connect it to a transmission line to get it on into the grid system for New England. So, yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's inflation needs to be brought under control for a lot of things. That's just one of them.
Yeah, the windmills will be produced in Europe, and they're in kind of a recessionary inflation situation. They have to transport them here, which is fuel cost, and then you assemble them hopefully in Massachusetts, which is our objective. That's a whole energy cost there, the manpower. Mm-hmm. So you got to ship them out into the ocean one at a time. Then you have to, start assembling them out in the ocean. And then you got to get down and lay those foundations deep in bedrock, which, of course, is environmental impacts. And then you got to drill deep. You not just, you got to drill deep to get these.
You can't just plop it on the bottom. No.
Yeah, no, you have to drill deep. I mean, so as you can imagine, it's not cheap. And investors and banks, it's their money, not yours.
Right. Yeah. So it's going to be a slow process, to say the least, for sure.
Yeah, COVID, Ukraine, global market changes. This macroeconomics on a global level has now impacted us at a local level regarding windmills. So it's unfortunate, but this is kind of where we are. I don't know what else to say. So hopefully, another company will find it acceptable to bid into our system, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think they are planning to resubmit next year, but obviously it'll be at a higher cost.
Well, this will delay the project by many years because you got to get everything ramped up. You have to get your orders in for the materials and all that for future construction, which is somewhat disappointing because I was really eager to have more renewable power come to the system. But as you can tell, I'm not oblivious to how this stuff is paid for.
Right. Yeah. We're at the end of our hour, Jackie. Again,
it's time flies when you're having fun, Joe.
We always wonder at the beginning, how are we ever going to fill an hour? And then we never have a problem.
Oh, I mean, it's just the two of us talking. And that's what makes this a lot of fun. And as you can tell, we both enjoy doing this. Sometimes I do ramble. Joe lets me ramble. But we always hope that, provides some insight and perhaps a different point of view that you may have thought of. And the objective here is not to convince you of anything. It's just to hopefully provide some useful information and another way of looking at life.
Yeah, and folks have suggestions on topics that they would like us to talk about or questions, be open to that. Be happy to hear from them.
Yeah, send it to Joe. Joe's my intern.
Oh, I'm back in high school now. Yes, they can send it to me, but they can send it to you too. And how do they do that?
Oh, well, no, don't send it to me. Send it to Joe. If you give it to me, I'm not giving it to Joe. I mean, why would I do that?
Okay.
But no, it's tacky.chan at mahouse.gov, TACKEYCHAN at mahouse.gov. Again, I'd like to let you know my email situation. We are very manageable right now on email, so happy to be able to see your emails. At TackyChan is my Twitter /X account, whatever you call it these days, and as well as State Representative TackyChan Facebook. We have TackyChan.org, which is just an informational page, and the way you can contact me through the form link there. And of course, MALegislature.gov, MALegislature.gov is the state official website, which I'm not allowed to make my own webpage. Hence, I have my own website for work purposes only. And of course, you listen to Joe in the morning in his podcasts. We'll play some catch up. And of course, you can watch us here at QATV as well as the QATV podcasts. And you can not just listen to me, but many other interesting and other elected officials.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tacky, as always. Good to talk to you.
Great talking to you, Joe. See you in a week's time.